Ahi, good morning. How are you? Nice to chat with you.
Likewise.
We were just having a talk before a press record about it being almost 11 years since we talked about one of the Pride shows, and it's kind of frightening how time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. A decade. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're going to be talking about Mixtape for Maladies, which is the third in your trilogy. I think the first
Mm.
one was Tea, and then Morning, the
After.
morning after. Yeah. So before we dig into this one, just give me a sense of what that trilogy has meant to you and why it was important for you to write it and get
Yeah,
it on
so
stage.
I guess you know, we left Sri Lanka not by choice. We were forced to leave our homeland. And I think the kind of questions or the burden of that was so overwhelming, and one book just was not enough. And I just needed multiple books to talk about the idea of exile, the idea of belonging, and the sense of trying to find a new home. And I think Tea, the morning after, and Mixed Formalities kind of like excavates on that idea of what is home, and how does one make home in a new place. And yeah, I just didn't want to be bound by a single style or a form. And so this work, well, I guess the trilogy allows me the kind of the wide canvas or the breadth to be able to really dig deep.
Now, you were born in the UK, but your family moved. I'm assuming your parents were from Sri Lanka and they moved back. How old were you when you moved there?
So I was born in England and we moved to Sri Lanka when I was three. And that was the day that we arrived in Sri Lanka was the 1983 riots. So that was the beginning of the big ethnic genocide, or the I guess the beginning of the civil war in an informal kind of way. And we were there for 7 years. And in 1990, when things were starting to really ramp up in terms of the war, that's when our family decided to move. And we had a choice of going to UK and coming here. And my parents wanted to get away from UK, somewhere much more quieter, and New Zealand was the one they chose.
That's an incredibly seminal part of one's life from three to 10.
Mm.
And so to move back to what is you considered your homeland at a time of civil war must have been really frightening for a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think my parents did a really good job of kind of like, I guess, shielding me from a lot of the kind of like the happenings that were happening around. I mean, we didn't have a television growing up, so I didn't really get to see a lot of the current affairs or know about it. But when the war started escalating, the danger started coming closer and closer to the door front. And that's when you really started noticing. So like there was always this uncertainty. I think there are like certain pivotal moments when like, when our school had a shooting, or when the buses were shot at, like when the danger was really close. I think that's when it really kind of like hit me. I think up to that point, I kind of lived in this kind of like cocoon, oblivious of what's been happening and what's been happening for such a long time, until like I'd say probably like the mid 80s is when I kind of started to remember things.
Yeah, and I guess those kinds of things stay with you for life, the memories, and they were happening at a time when it's quite hard for children to really process what's going on and the complexities within a society that can lead to these. I guess all you at that age you see is the challenge of it, the heartache of it. So it's fascinating. And I guess when you're unpicking that through the work, what kind of things are coming back to you, and is it an emotional journey for you as you're unpicking that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting bittersweet experience, because I mean, I'm really interested in the idea of memory and nostalgia. And, like my parents talk about Sri Lanka through these rose tinted glasses of this golden time. And I don't have any recollection or any memory of that, because I've never seen that. So, I have to go through archives and look at, old British Pathé like footage, going, okay, I see what you mean. And then obviously, like, each time I recollect a memory, I mean, it gets kind of altered somewhat. So I'm even unsure about, like what is it that I mean, I went back to Sri Lanka in 2015. That was like almost 25 years after leaving. But then I was really stunned by how much I did remember. Like I was able to walk from my house to my school, remember all of that. But yeah, there's a real sense of I guess, like a big part of Sri Lanka's legacy or history is that a lot of our past was erased. Our libraries were burned down, our literatures were written down, the coverage around the war was censored for such a long amount of time. So there's not much reliable or unbiased kind of like coverage of that. So a lot of the information facts that stay with me are anecdotes or stories that have been shared with family and friends. And again, the Sri Lankan community is very in trying to protect their, I guess, the children or us. They've kind of like, raised us in these kind of like high towers, but we're so unaware of what has happened. So part of this excavation is about trying to remember and to document, and as you were saying, like try and make sense, because what you experience as a as an adolescent is so much more complex, and you really see the injustice of it, or kind of question the humanity of it all. Yeah.
And I guess for your parents' generation and perhaps older generations, it makes sense that they want to protect their children and their grandchildren.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, one of the kind of strands in the story is a mother and son relationship, and the mother just does not speak about Sri Lanka, and and the question the son keeps asking is like, well, like I feel like we can't connect. Like there's this massive thing in there, but the very thing that they need to unlock is to go to that place of difficulty and talk about it. And but like obviously, with good drama, you just need to like tease it out for as long as possible.
Have your parents seen the shows and are going to see this one?
Well, yes, my mother has seen all my shows. This one I think is a little bit more personal because it is kind of loosely connected or draws from some of her experiences, but also a lot of my family friends, because I keep saying that there's no single truth, that this is a work that holds multiple truths. And, you can talk to many other Sri Lankans who will have a very different opinion about what happened. And I think theatre is one of those places where we can hold all these multiple truths in the space. And so hopefully my goal and my hope is that for those who have lived through the experience, that this is a way of healing or starting the healing process, or being able to find some form of acknowledgement. Because I think that's the biggest thing about the Sri Lankan Civil War, is that for so long it was happening and the world did not know about it. And putting this work on the main stage or sharing the story acts as a cautionary tale for those in the future to know what to look out for. And secondly, for Sri Lanka to have its moment.
I just wanted to briefly come back to your mother. So the work that she's seen that you've written about Sri Lanka, what effect has it had on her, or what reactions has she had to it?
I mean, I think my mother is very much a closely guarded person. She doesn't really say much. Like when she came to see T, I think she had 2 feedbacks about the costume and the shoes, and I was like absolutely livid. I'm like, Mother, this is like 8 years of my life on stage, and that's what you got to say for me. And often, like like we have a dynamic where we don't really get sentimental or can share things, but we would talk to others about it. So I know that she's talked to my brother about it. And now with this work, I had to check some details if that was okay for me to share that. I mean, it's not autobiographical, but there are moments or there's things that, and I want the experience to be safe for her. But over the years, her critical thinking and her way of being able to feed back to work has gotten better, which is also not something that I enjoy. Because I'm like, can you just like enjoy the work for what it is? I didn't ask for critical feedback. But I think I always, when I make theatre, I always make theatre with my mother in mind, because she's not a theatre person. She is just an average everyday housewife. And if I could speak to her and if I can connect to her, then I know that my work is going to be speaking to the general audience.
And she sounds like a typical mum. I think my mum
absolutely
has
right.
So that mothers the world over. Yeah, they're kind of like that. So what do you hope for a non-Sri Lankan audience to when they're coming and seeing this? So someone like me, what do you hope that we will take away from this work?
Yeah, I think like there's multiple things. Like this work I'm using Sri Lanka as a specific kind of gateway, but ultimately this is a story about memory. This is a story about family heirlooms. This is a story about the power of music. So I think for someone who's not from Sri Lanka, there's an insight into a country and a nation, a once thriving country that has given some of the best, kind of like, I guess, art and resources like tea and such things to the world, but has this incredibly sad tainted past as well. It gives you an insight into that country. But secondly, I think it's also like a great conversation starter, because I think often, if you haven't, New Zealand is so far away from, from ever having to go through something like that. So like, I guess this gives you a sense of like empathy and apathy to understand what it may have been like to be in the war. Because like the play isn't about recreating the tragedy or the war, but the play is more about looking at people who have kind of lost or have broken part of themselves and trying to put it together. And I think that's a universal thing, because I think we're always trying to find ways to put ourselves together and escape through music.
Well, I think you're right, and the reaction, the fact is that we're all part of the human family. So there are universal things that happen in every culture, some to different degrees. And I'm very conscious when I see works from other communities, how much they are like my own. And I think that's a really important thing for us to remember, particularly in a world now where the political situation globally seems to be getting worse. So I think these messages need to be reinforcing that we're all
absolutely
people.
Absolutely.
And your work usually balances the drama and the humor. So
absolutely.
I'm taking there's a lot of humor in this.
Yeah. And Sri Lankans are like we have a self-advocating like sense of humor. And I think that's the only way the country's been able to cope and being able to move forward. And for me as well, like laughter is the best way to get us opened up and to lose our inhibitions and to be able to be able to accept or be able to sit through the difficulty as well. The story kind of spans from 1960s right through to present day, and the heart of it is the sibling dynamic between a brother and his two sisters, and it's like coming of age, it's having your first crushes, like trying to like cultivate your kind of personality. So ultimately it's the coming of age story, but it kind of runs in parallel to the coming of age of the country as well.
Yeah, well, that sounds brilliant. I wish you all well for the season. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your time today, and all the best for the season.
Thank you so much for having me. You're great.